Today on the We Invested podcast, we have Amy Sylvis, and she is the founder and principal of Sylvis Capital. Amy, how are you doing today?
Wesley, I'm amazing. Thank you so much for having me. How are you?
I'm doing great, and I'm extremely excited to learn more about Sylvis Capital and how you got started in this industry. I'm excited.
Yes, sir. I'm really pumped too. This is really an honor.
Awesome, awesome. And before we get started, would you mind just letting the people know how they can find you on the internet, whether it's your website or social media?
Yeah, that's perfect. So I'm extremely active on LinkedIn. My last name is spelled a little funky, but I trust that Wesley's going to put the spelling in the show notes. So you can Google me or you can find me on LinkedIn, Amy Sylvis, and then sylviscapital.com. And if you want to learn more about us, you can add a backslash and put webinar. Got a 30-minute educational tutorial there. You can learn more about us.
That's so awesome. So let's just kind of start from the top and talk a little bit about, where you're from and where you grew up.
Yes. So I am in Los Angeles, California, born and raised. I'm actually in Pasadena. If you're a college football fan, I'm close to the Rose Bowl and love to go there every New Year's Day. I'm a big college football fan. So that's where I am.
That's awesome. So, LA is a huge city. It's a melting pot full of culture and just different things. So, how would you say that growing up in LA, impacted your outlook on life and success?
Yeah, I think to your point, I was really fortunate. I grew up in a kind of a traditional middle class family. My father does manual labor, did growing up, and at age 69 is still a manual laborer. And I think seeing that work ethic and being exposed to people from all walks of life, as you mentioned, and my parents really instilled in me, hey, a roof over your head, food in your belly, and education, like this is all a privilege. Not everyone gets that. So, and if you do get that, it is your responsibility to take care of and give to those who don't have that. So I feel really fortunate that I wasn't kind of isolated or lived around people that were just like me. LA is gorgeously diverse, and I'm a better person for it for sure.
Absolutely. I mean, and just speaking of work ethic, I mean, looking at some of the numbers and some of the stats and the things that you've accomplished, I mean, that really speaks to what you've done today. I mean, you have over 748 apartment units, over 208,000 square feet of flex industrial space, and $96 million worth of assets under management right now with Sylvis Capital. So, I just wanted to ask before we dive into that, I
Yeah.
want to ask, what is Sylvis Capital?
Yes. So we buy and operate large commercial real estate properties in kind of up and coming markets throughout the United States. And our goal is to really serve people who want to invest alongside us and take advantage of our ability to source these really exceptional deals in these great markets and help people build their wealth, whether it's to live off of, to replace their W-2 income, or get their retirement go up and going. We're really here to serve our investors and, of course, serve our residents and tenants as well.
Absolutely. And, how did you get started in this industry in real estate and commercial real estate?
It's a great question. If you'll humor me a bit, I have a little bit of an interesting background. It took me 10 full years to get into this space. And what prompted me to want to get into this space is when I was born, my parents were told that I'd live to be around 8 or 9 years old. And if I did make it that long, it was going to be a really hard road. I'm 41. You can't see because I dye my hair, but I've got the wrinkles and the gray hair to prove it. I was born with cystic fibrosis. It's a genetic illness that impacts my lungs. Even though, thank goodness, I didn't pass at 8 or 9 years old, I was in and out of the hospital with pneumonia for most of my life until a few years ago, which meant it was extremely difficult for me to just get through school, get through college, and then hold down a job. And I always knew at some point my ability to trade my time for money might not be there, right? Something that everyone kind of takes for granted, like, hey, yeah, I'm going to work, finding money, at least I can get a job. Well, when you're sitting in the hospital on very potent intravenous antibiotics, fighting for your life 2 to 3 times a year, 2 to 3 weeks at a time, it's tough to hold down a job. Most employers aren't understanding. So I was really looking for a way to not be a burden on my family. They would have supported me, but they sacrificed so much raising a disabled child that I wanted to find a way to be independent. And I came across that purple book I think a lot of people are familiar with called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And I went, oh, I can generate income even while I'm in the hospital. I can do things to support myself. So that was really kind of the nexus or the idea of where I got that. And then yeah, the journey the journey to do it was a little bumpy, but we're finally here.
Wow, I mean that is such an incredible story, and it just shows, the persistence and the will to want to be successful and to continue to thrive, even though you've been given these diagnoses. You did not let that stop you. You did not let that hinder you. You continue to move forward and find a way to keep pushing. Would you say that that also played a big part in the work ethic that you have today?
I think so. I was given a miracle drug around 3 years ago, not quite a cure, but something that changed my health forever in a great way. I feel like I've been launched out of a rocket ship because I now know very similar, what it's like to live in a healthy body, what it's like to be able to, kind of work. And ironically, I trade my time for money a little bit now. But yeah, I think, having that perspective, as we all have, right? We all have struggles. I'm not unique. Every single person has a story. And we can leverage that as I have tried to, yeah, to really give me perspective and a reason why I want to have that work ethic and do what I do.
Absolutely, man. That is so incredible. I mean, and you know, real estate is simple, but it's not easy. So, the idea and the concept of it makes a lot of sense, but once you get started and once you really get involved, you understand how much details and how many different aspects there are to real estate. So when you were making that transition into commercial real estate, with these large numbers, especially being out in LA, these huge values for these properties, I mean, was that ever intimidating? How did you feel making that transition into, commercial real estate?
Extremely intimidated, extremely. Well, and Los Angeles, unfortunately, isn't really a great market to invest in. So I not only was intimidated by just, transitioning industries, as you alluded to, but I knew I couldn't invest in my own backyard. I needed to go to other areas of the country, some places where I'd never even been before, and learn the local markets, travel out there, get to know and do research. So yeah, without a doubt, I definitely get intimidated. I still do to some extent to this day, but there are many ways to mitigate that, right? I love, one of the quotes I heard is you feel the fear and you do it anyway. So I continue to live by that mantra.
Absolutely, man. It's so incredible. And so, I think it's really exciting and amazing what you're doing and what you're building. And, the focus that you have. When I was doing my research a little earlier, correct me if I'm wrong, but one of your main principles or main premises is to provide safe and clean housing for your residents and for the people staying there. And something that I thought was really powerful was saying that that is non-negotiable. So, what was the idea and the vision behind, that motto or that outlook?
Yes, sir. I think culture sometimes teaches us that, we have to step on other people or maybe, not do right by people in order to make money. And I've been very fortunate, even through watching my father do manual labor, and even while no one's looking, seeing him do the right thing. And I just believe in my heart of hearts, and now I've seen in my business, you can do the right thing by people, treat people well, better than they ever expect, and still make money. In fact, I think in this business, these things are inextricably linked, right? If I treat my residents well, they feel like they're not just a number on the spreadsheet that I have, but they're human beings with needs and dreams and wants and all of that. They're going to stay, right? Some of my largest expenses as an apartment owner are turnover costs. When people leave, it costs a lot of money to get a unit ready for the next resident. So my interests are aligned with them, obviously above and beyond, how I feel in my heart. But I just think, my role here, I'm not here by accident. I didn't live, 4 times my life expectancy just to fleece people and not make a positive impact in the world. So that makes me feel good when I get up every day. I know I'm doing the right thing by people, even though they may not know me directly. I'm still having a positive impact on communities.
Absolutely. I mean, and not only do you have a positive impact on the residents, but you also have an extremely positive impact on the investors, and the people that believe in your vision and believe in what you're doing. So, I wanted to ask, can anyone invest with Sylvis Capital, or are there these certain thresholds where only accredited investors are accepted? How does that work?
That's a great question. We do deals for folks that are not accredited. That's extremely important to us because accredited folks have a lot of options, right? They're not hurting for the ability to build their wealth. Not accredited folks, which I was just recently, how are folks supposed to get in the game? So we very intentionally want to offer those not accredited investors an option. So yeah, we definitely welcome folks.
Absolutely. And what would you say are some of the benefits, that investors experience when they decide to invest with Sylvis Capital?
Sure. Well, I think to your point, we buy real estate. We want to make money. No one's going to say, we're in a nonprofit business, but we try to do the right thing. So, knowing that your dollars are not just going to, enrich random people, you're really doing something that's going to have a positive impact on the community, and you're going to hear from us about it. You're going to know about the food drives we do. You're going to know about, how we take care of the elderly woman in the apartment complex that needs a little bit of extra help. But, you're going to hear those stories. I think additionally, a lot of folks, investing in stocks, bonds, and mutual funds, we're kind of told that that's the only thing that they can do maybe in their retirement account. But we are able to help people understand they can diversify and get into real estate and own, part of a big apartment complex, get those tax benefits, but also do it passively. Many folks are busy with their jobs. They've got kids, they have hobbies. They don't need another job of managing real estate. We take care of all of that for folks. So they're just collecting checks while we make sure that the job gets done.
Absolutely. I mean, and just speaking of that passive income, it's something that everybody is after, everybody's chasing, and everybody wants to be able to create for themselves. Is there a specific return percentage that investors can expect to get back, or is there a certain goal that Sylvis Capital has to return back to its investors?
I love that question. Because we accept non-accredited investors, the SEC doesn't allow us to talk on a mass scale publicly what our returns are. So I'm happy to discuss with people one-on-one. I hope you understand I'm not trying to be coy here or skirt the question. We just always try to follow the law. We're highly regulated by the Securities and Exchange Commission. So I'll have to pass on that question, Wesley. I'm sorry.
Absolutely. No, no problem. I completely understand. We want to stay
Yeah.
within compliance for sure.
Yes, sir.
But something that I really admire about this company and this brand that you've built is that you focus on multifamily real estate, which is, the more doors equals more cash flow, more passive income. Is there anything specifically that led you to want to, go to multifamily units instead of just a single family home?
Yes, 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 yes. I was really, you talk about being intimidated. I was really intimidated and thought, hey, let's buy a single family, see how that goes. I didn't realize it's actually easier in many ways to buy a multifamily product. So, what do I mean? Well, let's say I own a single residence and that resident moves out. Who's paying my mortgage? No one. It's me, right? It falls back on me. I've got 100% vacancy. What if I have a 100 unit complex and one resident leaves? I have got 99% occupancy, only 1% vacancy, which means those other 99 residents are still far and away paying my mortgage, paying my insurance, paying my taxes and such. So there's a lot less risk. Also, a lot of these loans that you take out to buy apartment complexes, they're not personally guaranteed by you. They're guaranteed by the property. Very different than a single family home. So, obviously we try to run these very well and God forbid anything goes wrong. But I think it's really important for folks to understand that, maybe you're not starting off with the best credit score. Maybe you're, there can be some personal things. Well, it can actually be easier to get a multifamily complex. There are going to be a few other stipulations, of course, but it's really a different mindset. The third thing I would mention, especially because I'm in Los Angeles, I invest out of state, the quality of property management that you can get with a 100-unit apartment complex is so much more sophisticated, institutional quality than maybe just a single family, company that you might use. So a lot of these things make it easier to be a multifamily investor versus single family. It's a great question.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I want to ask you a question and see if it's okay if I take you back in time
Yeah.
and ask you about your first deal when you saw that this works, you have the proof of concept, and then you just knew like, okay, this is what I want to do forever. What was that first deal, and then what was that moment like?
Yes. So I purchased a 58 unit apartment complex in Clarksville, Tennessee. If you don't know Tennessee very well, this is about an hour northwest of Nashville. Incredible market, great state, great people, booming economy. And yeah, it was 2 days after my 40th birthday. And I couldn't believe that I had reached my goal of finally getting my first deal. Um, Driving around the apartment complex, being there on the day of closing, I felt so much joy, but also this extreme sense of responsibility, right? Caring for these families and these residents, caring for obviously our investors as well. And, anyone who's done this knows the takeover process can be cumbersome, there's a lot that goes on before you get up and running. The day after we closed on the apartment complex, I got a call from our property management company, and they said, hey, there is a wheelchair bound woman on the second floor of the apartment complex, and the only way to get in and out are stairs. So she's scooting down on her tush to get out of the apartment complex. And I went, wait, what? Obviously we didn't put her there, right? The previous property management and the previous owner put her there. We went right into, how are we going to help this woman, right? So we get her on the line. We ask if we need to relocate her to a hotel until we find a place for her to go. How can we help her move her things? Does she need it? Does she have enough food? Like, has she, what's been going on with this woman? And it really hit me what a privileged position I was in to be able to have, my own personal funds and the knowledge and the power to help someone who has a really tough life. It's not easy to be wheelchair bound. I'm imagining she has a lot of accessibility issues. And on top of that, someone, I don't know how, put her in a unit that isn't accessible to her. I mean, it just the basic functions of life. And yes, I was excited. I was, excited to make money and all this, but to be in a position and to still be in a position where I can make those calls immediately and make someone's life significantly better. I can't think of anything better. So maybe that's a little bit of a different answer than what maybe you were going for, but that's really when I was hooked, because I knew I had the capability to give back and care for people like I'd always wanted to do.
Absolutely. No, and I think that was a great answer and a great response. And it just shows a more human side to real estate because, I still live in an apartment myself and I rent, but you view an apartment as just like a big business or a corporation in a way,
Yeah.
like a conglomerate, so to speak. So you're really humanizing this space and bringing forth like just empathy and compassion for the people. And I'm sure that that pays off in the long run. That makes more people want to do business with you as well as utilize your units and stay in your apartment. So I mean, I commend you for that 1000%.
Thank you. No, it's the right thing to do. It feels good. We're designed to feel really good when we're giving to people. So I lean into that for sure.
Absolutely. I mean, and another great benefit for another great benefit that real estate has is its hedge against inflation, which is, I mean, what we've been experiencing for the past, I'll say 18 months now at this point. But, by making smart investments in real estate and making those, doing your due diligence where you're analyzing deals and analyzing properties, I mean, you can still have the ability to bring in that passive income and, beat the market, so to speak.
Yes, sir. Yeah, you're spot on. Acquiring assets is really one of the best ways to beat inflation. And if you can leverage those assets, get debt, that actually compounds what you're doing because you're paying down that debt month after month, year after year with dollars that are worth less. So if anyone follows Jason Hartman, he's got the phrase inflation induced debt destruction.
Mm.
Which is kind of a funny phrase, but it really, yes, there are so many ways that real estate does help us fight inflation. It's important.
Absolutely. I mean, another ideology of yours that I was able to find and I really liked and wanted to hear you expand a little bit on was, one of your goals is achieving the five freedoms. And those five freedoms are financial freedom, time freedom, geographic freedom, freedom of association, and then the freedom of purpose. So could you just expand a little bit more on the vision and the idea behind that thought process.
Yes, sir. I really believe we are born to be free. And unfortunately, myself included, we get stuck in this kind of rat race, this hamster wheel without even knowing. That's the scariest part. These chains that we're bound by, we don't even realize that they're there. And maybe your folks resonate with this. Maybe you're forced at work to be around people that, don't feel like they're who you want to associate with, or maybe you've got kiddos and you're forced to work a certain set of hours at your job, and you're missing their game or missing just helping them with homework after work. I feel closest to my creator when I travel. I love to see people that are different than me, that have different beliefs. Maybe you want to have freedom of geography and see what else this amazing planet has to have, both in nature, but also people. There are so many ways I think that real estate and passive income can help us break these chains, unlock the freedom, and even excess money to be able to give to charity, like my husband and I love to do, and have further impact on this world. So, yes, those five freedoms are something that really get me through. Real estate isn't all rainbows and unicorns, right? There are some really tough days, but I keep these freedoms in mind that I'm so blessed to have as a real estate investor, and I'm helping my investors get as well. So it's very exciting.
Absolutely, man. And I think that you sharing your ideas and your ideals and what you believe in, and your goals and what you want to accomplish will help many other listeners and other people, and people that you come in contact with. It will help them put things into perspective, and take a step back and say, okay, maybe work isn't my entire life, or maybe this isn't my entire life. Let me go out and see the world. Let me go out and travel. Let me buy my time back and buy my freedom back. I mean, I think it's amazing, and I think that's really what life is all about, man. Is just exploring, seeing the world, seeing more, meeting new people, and trying new things.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Yeah. I think culture definitely really cheats us out of this idea of, make more money, get that next title. And it's like, well, yeah, but do you control your own time? I mean, you make a lot of money, but how are you going to spend that? Is that worth more of your time? And for some people, they love their job, right? I'm not trying to shame anyone who's climbing the corporate ladder and loves it and has set up their life exactly the way they want it. But I think some folks don't realize that there is an alternative. I didn't. I had
Exactly.
no idea. I just thought everyone around me, middle class family, you trade your time for money. That's just how life is. So yeah, I love spreading the word that there is another way should you choose.
Absolutely. A little earlier, you mentioned that the SEC has these certain rules and laws in place,
Yes.
which I mean I think is amazing, and it's extremely important to know and understand what you can and cannot do in your field. I mean, in my day job, that's like one of the biggest departments is the compliance department, to understand what we can and can't do so we can stay in line. But
Yes.
what I want to ask is, how did you focus on gaining this business acumen, and boosting your business IQ? Because I mean, you've built a large business that is has a lot of rules and under a lot of scrutiny. So how did you focus on becoming a better businesswoman and a better business person to run this business efficiently?
Yes, sir. Well, I started off by listening to brilliant minds like you and podcasts like you. They call it found time, right? I'm doing my laundry, I'm doing the dishes, I'm driving around in LA traffic. There's so much you can learn by listening to podcasts. And I commend you, for spreading information like you do to your podcast listeners. But I think being very intentional, right? Because the government, unfortunately, they don't care if you have ignorance of the law. The law is the law. So really, intentionally finding, like Mauricio Raul. He's a guy that is an SEC attorney for syndicators and people that raise capital, paying very close attention, reading books, and yeah, really keeping abreast of even when laws change. Yeah, I think it's important. I think some people kind of resent and push back on regulations, but I think in my industry, I'm going to go out here on a limb. I think the SEC and the government are there to protect the investors. And I think that's the right thing to do. I think it's important that, we have this transparency and these regulations so folks know what they're getting into. They have the documentation and information so they can make the best decision themselves. So yeah, it is really, to your point, it's an active part of my business that I'm always having to keep tabs on through podcasts, through books, and making sure I've got lawyers on my team that I'm keeping in close contact with to get updates.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, and speaking of, raising capital and working with different, attorneys and just different aspects of the business, I want to ask a pretty personal question here.
Yeah, sure.
Um, have you ever faced any bias or anything being a woman in a sort of a male dominated field, such as like commercial real estate?
That's a really good question. I kind of a tomboy. I mentioned I like college football. I've always been in a male dominated industry. Prior to this, I was in biotech. Not a lot of women in that field either. Um, I don't know why. I'm very grateful. I don't feel like I faced a whole lot of bias. I'm really grateful. People in this space are exceptionally caring, respectful, and have this abundance mentality where folks want to help each other even if they're competitors. It's amazing. It's one of the reasons I love what I do. So I guess it's possible that maybe I just was blind to maybe people treating me differently. But yeah, I think, I try to lead with respect. I try to lead with care and empathy. You mentioned that word empathy. It's one of my favorite, words and things to offer to people. So I see it reciprocated. So fortunately, I haven't, but maybe I'm just blind to it. I don't know.
Awesome. No, and it's just like, man, you're so passionate about real estate and helping people, and the energy is like is coming through the computer right now. Um, but I can feel the focus as well. So I mean, this is motivating me just through this conversation. But what I want to ask is, you mentioned mentors and having different resources that you go to. So I want to ask, what is the importance of having a team, and how did you focus on building your team?
Oh my gosh. Yes. Yeah, gosh, where do I even start? This is a team sport without a doubt. And I have to admit, through my own insecurity, my inexperience, I felt like my lack of knowledge, I was really hesitant to try to form a team or join a team because I wasn't sure what I'd be able to contribute. But gosh, once I kind of got vulnerable, put myself out there, and was able to form a team, that's when everything clicked. And in fact, it was a mentor of mine that I developed that relationship. I kept showing up. A lot of people recognize the name Maurice Philogene in this space. He was my mentor. He was one of my first business partners that, really took a chance on me, but I tried to prove myself that, hey, I've got something to offer here. So yeah, it is a team sport, and you can go further faster by making sure you have a team. It can be intimidating, it can be overwhelming, but it's what you have to do to succeed without a doubt.
Absolutely. I mean, and I yeah, I think that's a I agree with that 1000%. And I think it's a difficult transition for a lot of entrepreneurs to make, because a, a lot of most entrepreneurs, especially if they're successful, they're like high achievers, and you know they they like to be in control and want
Yes,
to have
sir.
their hands in everything. So it can be kind of difficult to turn over like something that you built and started from the ground up, and then you just like, okay, now you run with it. Like I understand how that can be like a difficult task or a difficult thing to do.
So true. So true. You realize very quickly, though, that if you're going to do right by your residents and you're going to do right by your investors, I don't care how smart you are or how much time you have, 24 hours in a day and a PhD in real estate investing is not going to get you there. So, yeah, it is a humbling experience, and it's not always smooth, right? People are people. So, yeah, it definitely takes some vulnerability and some relinquishing of control, but you're spot on.
What are some roadblocks or lessons that you've learned throughout your career in real estate?
I love that. So I think one of the biggest roadblocks I hit was investing in an area where I didn't understand the local government. I understood the
Mm,
state government. I didn't understand the local government. I'll tell you why. So Atlanta, Georgia. Atlanta, if you don't know, is split into two counties. They operate very differently. We do everything we can with our residents to not have to evict. Things happen to people, COVID, job loss, life happens, right? We're not the type of people that are going to kick someone out if their payment's a day late. That doesn't serve us, that doesn't serve them. We work with people. But at a certain point, if folks are, causing trouble, that some things happen, you kind of have to sit down and have a conversation. Well, there is one county it's called DeKalb County in Atlanta. I hope I don't get in trouble for talking about it, but they are so backlogged on evictions. I'm talking like 2.5 years backlogged. And I understand their philosophy behind it. They don't want to kick people out. I understand all of this deeply, but at a certain point, we still have to pay our mortgage, and we still have to pay our insurance and our taxes, and that comes from our rent. We just had no idea, I'll be very candid, that there was that it was possible for governments to kind of make these decisions about how to handle non-paying residents. And I'm talking about people that haven't paid in like 6 months, not a week. Like these are people, and some of them are violent, and things like that. So it feels awful to talk about, but it is a strong reminder to me that as we want to impact and have a positive impact on communities, it is really important that we understand kind of how cities and how local counties think about landlords and think about the multifamily space. So yeah, it's been a troublesome property, and I think we will definitely, we've definitely, ever since the past 2 years, made sure we've done our local research, so we make sure we don't get in a situation like that.
Absolutely. No, and I definitely appreciate the transparency, um, and just showing, both sides of real estate and what comes with it. I mean, you have the passive income and the tax benefits, and then the hedges against inflation. But then
Yes,
on
sir.
the other side, you know, there are other things to deal with, but you are still persevering and moving forward, and just learning all you can, and staying positive. So I mean, I think that's a great outlook to have on it.
Appreciate it. Yeah, no, there are always levers to pull. And I know the faces of some of the families that live in this apartment complex. They deserve to have safe housing. They deserve to not have to worry their little kiddos are around, some people that are violent, things like that. So that really keeps us motivated to, yes, we have an obstacle. Yes, there are some things that are challenging, but other apartment owners are solving the issue. There are ways to make sure we can make this a great place to live and get the return that we promised to our investors. So it's just another learning experience.
How do you define success as an entrepreneur at this point in your career?
Ooh, I think first and foremost, doing what I say I'm going to do. So when my residents, sign up for a lease and we promise that we're going to give them safe, secure, clean housing, that we're doing that. Or if there are obstacles to that, we're continuing to work towards and make progress. Same with our investors. Are we giving them preservation of capital? Are we returning their investment? Are we giving them the return? I think, and then having a positive impact on the community. My husband and I make our business goals not based on income, but how much we can give to charity every year. So if we want to write X amount of check to charity this year, how many deals do we have to do? How much capital do we have to raise? We kind of back out from there. So we're always looking to, grow those checks, make those checks bigger. But then, of course, have the ability to have our freedom as well, and travel and spend time with people we love. So I guess it's a little bit more of a multifaceted what success looks like for us. But that's really what is important to us and how we define success.
Absolutely, absolutely. And how would you like for people to remember you, as well as the company that you've built and created?
Ooh, wow. You're one of the best interviewers I've ever been on a podcast with, Leslie. That's a great question. That's really impressive. Okay. How would I like people to remember? I'd like people to remember me by how I made them feel. Did they feel like I really cared? Did they feel like I was being honest with them? Did they feel like my intentions, I said something, but my intentions actually came forward? Um, and do people feel like I created a better place in this world for them to live, for them to invest? Or, my husband and I donate to charity here in Los Angeles. Did we make impact on children in a positive way? That's my hope.
Absolutely. I mean, and what does the future of Sylvis Capital look like to you?
We're going to continue to diversify. I think multifamily is an incredible asset to invest in. We have our first, you mentioned that flex industrial project that we have in Kansas City, Missouri. I think there is, I'm sure people have heard that term onshoring, but we're bringing back manufacturing from overseas back to the United States, giving workers more jobs, giving us security for the supply chain here. I would love to continue to be a part of that, because I know, if we have industrial space that we own and operate, we're helping to contribute to, American jobs, American workers, and folks that are really trying to make a living for themselves and their families. So I'm not going to step away from multifamily, but we would love to have a little bit of a diversification play as our nation builds back its manufacturing capacity.
Man, that is so incredible. I mean, this has been a man. I'm just glad I got a chance to pick your brain and
Oh,
get to have this conversation with you. So, Amy, thank you so much for your time today. I
thank
really
you.
appreciate it. And yeah, man, this was a great episode. This was legendary.
Wesley, thank you. You're one of the best interviewers I've had. No joke. So, right back at you. Really appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you.